Oh, never had it say that before.
And did you say someone else joined in?
David,
Okay.
David
So just
came
be
in.
comfortably seated. Okay, yeah. So just let's be comfortably seated. Let's find a nice posture to sit up straight. Let ourselves feel very gently supported in whatever position we're sitting in. We can leave the eyes open, but just let the gaze be soft. And bring our attention to our breath. Try to follow the breath as the body's moving down below the abdomen, breathing in and breathing out. You can feel the belly get soft and gentle. And when you breathe in, you want the whole body to fill up with breath and just really relax. Enjoying the in-breath, enjoying that we have breath. And breathing out, just gently smiling a bit, letting the breath come out. And after the exhale, just pausing and resting and letting the body take the next breath when you're ready. And breathing in through the nose, using the breath to fill up the whole body. And breathing out and settling. And after the out breath, again, not taking a breath, just following and watching the breath. There's a natural stillness that arises. Just resting in that awareness. And as you breathe in, just let the breath really expand through the whole body. You can even visualize the breath having a very bright, light color that's going through the whole body, energizing all the cells, healthy, expanding. And as you exhale, breathing out any impurities, letting go of any negativities, just imagining them washing out through the bottoms of your feet as you exhale, and expanding more and more into a pure light presence with awareness and enjoying. And just notice if the mind is busy, if thoughts are coming up, just notice that thinking is happening, but try to not follow the thoughts. Just come back to your breath, breathing in and breathing out, just being aware. Thoughts are natural. You don't have to try to stop thinking, but just notice that the thoughts try to interrupt the focus on the breath, and just gently guide the breath, the focus back to the breath. Let the thoughts kind of be like clouds in the sky. They just kind of appear and they'll disappear again. The mind just stays with the breath, just enjoying that focus. So now let's bring our attention out of meditation and gently just come back into the awareness of the room that you're sitting in, into your body, paying attention to your state of mind now coming out of the meditation. Is it any different than when we started a few minutes ago? Just paying attention to your own knowing and your own awareness as you come out of the meditation. So we want to use our own experience in our practice to feel confident about being able to transform our minds with our practice. We want to be able to understand what's happening when we take a few minutes to practice so that we feel confident in wanting to continue. So we'll just start. Before I give a little Dharma talk, if you're a Buddhist, you can renew your or say your refuge vows. I'm going to just say the refuge vows because the talk that I'm going to give are not my thoughts and my teachings. They come from the Buddha. And I'm going to just share some thoughts from the teaching of the Buddha. So first we take refuge because it reminds us that these are the teachings of the Buddha and to stay true to the Buddha's teachings. In Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I go for refuge until enlightenment. From merit, from giving, and the rest, in order to aid all, may I become Buddha. In Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, until enlightenment, I go for refuge. From merit, from giving, and the rest, in order to aid all, may I become Buddha. In Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I go for refuge until enlightenment. From merit, from giving, and the rest, in order to aid all, may I become Buddha. So the talk that we want to think about today that came to mind that hopefully will be very beneficial is ironically about not talking. So here at the nunnery, every year we go into a 2-month retreat in silence. During our practice, we speak sacred words. We speak what's called a sadhana, a sacred text. But for the rest of the day and all through the night, we live in silence. Even if we see other people, if we're eating, we maintain what's called noble silence, which means we don't look at each other's eyes, we don't gesture with the body, we're not communicating in any way. We are fully and focused only on our practice, on maintaining a connection, a deep awareness and connection with the awakened mind, with the Buddha nature, and moving only in noble silence and in complete peace and compassion towards oneself and towards our surroundings. So individually, we're creating our own sacred intention by maintaining that noble silence to connect deeply with our Buddha nature. So when the Buddha attained enlightenment, he spent many weeks in Bodh Gaya, at the site where he attained enlightenment, just in silence, walking back and forth. When he attained enlightenment, and for 6 years during his deep practice, he often was living in complete silence. He was searching for awakening by looking within his own mind, by looking within his own experience, and by using practices that helped him do that. This is why so many times when we see the image of the Buddha, he's sitting in meditation. He's sitting in a deep contemplative pose. When we're in meditation, we're not speaking. Maybe we have thoughts, so our mind might still be speaking to us, but our mouth and our vibration of sound is silent. And this is very important. Why? Because in Vajrayana Buddhism, which is also called Mantrayana, sound is very sacred. Our whole world, our whole existence comes into being because of vibration. And what happens when we absorb into noble silence, when we go into quietness, into solitude, is that we allow ourselves to be absorbed by the silence. We give up an individual identity, we give up our individual concepts, thoughts, ideas, opinions. We let them all go. And we touch down into a ground of something much more deep and much more profound. This is very precious. It's very brave. It's very courageous. For each one of us, our whole identity and our whole life is primarily built upon our ideas about who we are, about our labels, about our relationships to others, whether it's as a sister, as a partner, as a grandmother, as a mother, as a father, as a brother, as a friend, whatever job we're doing. We have many, many roles that we're playing based on labels, based on concepts, based on sounds. We have created these ideas and concepts based on learning to use words and language that tell us about who we are. And so when we go into noble silence, we're willing then to drop all of those sounds, all of those identities, all of those labels. This is very brave and very profound. It opens us up to a whole new field, a whole new void, a void not that's empty in the sense of meaninglessness and of nihilism, of an absence, but of richness and a fullness that contains everything. And touching into that wide open experience is where true freedom is found. We move beyond identities. We move beyond concepts. And we move beyond these ideas and very strong opinions that we hold of who we really are. And when we let those go, we really start to understand on a much deeper level what is meant by our Buddha nature. There are no words for it, there are no concepts for it, and there are really no ideas that can express anything about it, touching in and experiencing it. And so in retreat, in noble silence, it's like an invitation. It's like closing the doors to all these other identities that we've been introduced to, kind of roles that we've taken on, that we play as we dance through our lifetime. We kind of close the doors to those performances, and then we wait. We wait in our own unknowing of what we are going to find when we give those things up. And we wait with a lot of patience and a lot of clarity and a lot of attention, a lot of awareness to see what our mind is going to do with this kind of freedom now of a new experience. What does it mean? I'm not my name. What does it mean? I'm not my gender. What does it mean? I'm not my nationality. What does it mean? I'm not my career title. These are very bold and brave questions to start to explore. These are the kinds of things that we get to really invite into when we go into retreat. But one does not need to be on retreat to be able to do this. Every time we go into our meditation, we can use this practice. Every time we sit down, even for 5 minutes, we can invite the world and all the identities we play within that world to simply melt away and just to throw open the doors of awareness to breathing in and breathing out, not even asking deeper questions, but just enjoying the freedom that goes beyond conceptuality, the freedom that goes beyond our identities that we've taken on, either ourselves willingly or that others project onto us. And all of us subject to this, even our gurus, we give them identities as Lama, as names, as guru, as enlightened ones. And the beauty of in our own practice is to find out with our own awareness, hey, look, I also have this Buddha nature. I also can touch into this awareness and experience it. And the more we practice and the more we experience it, the only difference between us and the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and the only difference between us and the gurus and the lamas is that they've just practiced longer. That's all. They've just been practicing for a much longer time with much more commitment. And so their knowing of their real nature is much more clear and much more firm than our own. Maybe we know it a little bit because we've touched into it. It's like we've plugged that cord in, but we don't keep it plugged in. And sometimes the power drains out, the connection comes out. And so we need to plug in again. And we need to recharge back into that awareness of the Buddha nature. The more we keep ourselves charged up into that nature, the more we become that nature. The more we are aware of that nature, the more we don't forget about it. And it's not like our battery charge is losing and we're forgetting and we're getting trapped again into the roles of samsara, into the beliefs of our own opinions, getting distracted. So it's very wonderful and important that we have a daily practice to do this. It's a very intuitive practice when we sit breathing in and breathing out. If you have a practice, then if you do the breathing in and breathing out and counting, if you need to settle the mind, you can count up to 21 times. One breath in is one breath out is two. And if you can follow that in and out up to counting for 21 times and you're still on track, you haven't lost count, at 21 you can drop the counting and then just go into the total, become the breathing in and out, be absorbed with it, be in unity with it, because in actuality you are. And once we become in unity with our breath, we're in unity with everything. We're in unity with life. All of life is breathing, isn't it? If we're not breathing, we're not alive. And even in a deeper sense, we're connecting then with all of life that gives us life. So we're connecting with all the green trees, we're connecting with the oxygen and the material of our physical being. We're seeing that we're deeply interconnected with all of the green life on the planet, creating the oxygen that gives us the power to be able to breathe. We're connecting with settling the water element in our bodies, a stillness that brings calmness and clarity, like clear water in a morning lake. When we go down to the edge, we can look right through the water and see all the way down to the bottom of the lake because there's nothing moving. So we're pacifying and stilling our body. And then we're calming ourselves, all of our emotions that sometimes can be overheated. we're bringing the emotions very calm and cool into a deep sense of compassion and peace. And then we're also letting the body itself, the physicality, the earth element, become very still. So often, as humans these days, we're human doings and not human beings. So in our meditation, we just want to be. Just be still, be present, be in the movement of breath, be with awareness, and then let go and feel that there's a deeper sense, another layer beneath that of deep presence and peace, and really enjoy it. That's the point that we practice, is to enjoy, to connect with that oneness, to connect in unity with that deep, loving kindness, presence of awareness. This is starting to plug into our deeper recharge, our deeper Buddha nature that is aware, that is already enlightened, is already awake, that is already kind and compassionate, calm and pure. But if we don't practice, it's very easy to forget that. So our practice in our meditation, meditation in English comes from a root word in Greek, metta, and metta means to pay attention to be aware of. Like medication, it's the same word, root in English. Many people know about medication, to take something to you're aware of something's not right with the body, you're taking something to try to recalibrate it, to reset it. Meditation is also from the same Greek root, pay attention to, be aware of. And still, when we go to the doctors and people ask us to check up, they are listening with a stethoscope, they ask us to take a deep breath. They'll say, take a deep breath, and then they'll move the stethoscope. Okay, take a deep breath again. Then they'll move to the back, take another deep breath. And they're listening to our lungs. And ironically, that the COVID is something that really attacks our capacity for breath. There's something very profound about that, because breath is our lifeline. We need our breath. Even more, we cannot live without breath for more than a few minutes. We can live without water for a few days. If we have breath and water, we can live without food for up to a month, if we're in good physical shape. But without breath, we can only last a few minutes. So breath is the lifeline to our very existence. And yet, how few people are ever teaching and helping others learn about the essential nature of breath. So our meditation is an opportunity to connect with that breath and to go deeper into the Buddha nature that becomes aware of the preciousness of breath, the preciousness of having life. And what is our real purpose of life? Is to become much more aware and awakened to the deeper essence of the life, not the physicality. Many people these days are very caught up in becoming a foodie and thinking about the special foods that they're eating, becoming vegetarian, becoming vegan. Buddha didn't teach anything about this. He didn't even teach about being vegetarian, actually. His monks and himself, he begged for his food 1 or 2 meals a day, and he accepted whatever food was put into his bowl. So this whole idea of foodie, vegetarian, veganism is a whole other layer that he didn't get into. He was trying to encourage his Sangha, his monks, his nuns, his lay people to touch base with their Buddha nature, which is the awareness, which is the mind, which is the consciousness. And Buddha nature is not concerned with gender identity. It's not concerned with race or religion. He transcended and blew apart the caste system. He said it has nothing to do with which class or caste you're born into. And he certainly wasn't worried about food. Of course, he was teaching about being kind to animals and to all creatures that live, even to little insects and to birds and to fish. And he did not allow his Sangha to cook meat for themselves. But if people offered them food that had meat as a donor, if you're a member of the Sangha, you've renounced going for your own food and collecting your own food. If someone's gifting you food, you just say thank you, because you're accepting what others are offering to you. You're not being picky about that. You're not being prideful about it. He did say to his Sangha, yes, it's better if you do not yourself take meat and can eat without taking meat. But if someone offers it to you, the Sangha was not allowed to reject that. because if you're a beggar, you just humbly say thank you and you take it. And if it's happening very infrequently, okay, then it's just food. Here in the nunnery, we eat lunch, we eat only vegetarian food, and even our dogs and cats that live here eat only vegetarian food. Dogs can eat vegetarian. Our dogs eat rice and dal and chapatis, and our oldest dog, Sangmo, is about 15. Oh, we just lost power. I'm gonna see if I can still have the internet signal and move out here onto the porch. And if not, I will take my iPhone and set up a hotspot with it. Let me know if you can still hear me. Now you can hear the birdies. Can you hear the
We can.
birds?
Yes, yes.
That's nice to hear. So the point is, with animals, with everything that lives, they're the same as we are. They want happiness and they don't want suffering. They want they want love and kindness. They don't want to be harmed. They want to have feelings of safety, and they don't want to have feelings of threat. So animals are very much like human beings in that way. They like to know that their surroundings are kind and pleasant. They like to know that whoever's in their vicinity is not an enemy. Dogs show that when they're happy, they wag their tail. Cats show, they make little sounds and they express their happiness when they're contented. Birdies are singing when they're happy. And so how much more alike are they to us than not alike? The biggest difference between animals and human beings is consciousness. Animals do have consciousness, of course they do. Everything that's living, that has a body and a life form, has consciousness. But the big difference for most other animals is that they don't have a self-reflexive consciousness to the same degree. What do I mean? I mean, they're aware when they're hungry, they'll go looking for food. So our dog Sangmo, who's the 15-year-old dog, sometimes she's passing through here about this time. That's why I'm looking over the balcony. When she's hungry, she decides on her own schedule, okay, I'm going off now and I'm going to go find food. And she'll jaunt around the nunnery until someone gives her the food that she wants. And when the little puppies who are here are hungry, they'll come and they'll start clamoring up on the nuns, and they'll start, begging a little bit for some food. They'll express that they have needs and that they want their needs to be met. Birds will also fly around and go looking. When our gardeners just cleared up our garden, the birds come and they start, pecking around in the dirt to get the insects and the worms. They know that that's a time that they can find food. The cats likewise will come around looking for some treats. So animals are also, similar. Human beings, also Homo sapiens, are included in the category of animals, have sensitivity around their needs, and they know what to do to meet their needs. They go looking to have their needs met. The thing that we don't know about animals that we believe is that they don't really understand, like a nun friend I was talking to, my sister Sojung, Tenzin Sojung, in Austria today, one of my nun sisters, and she is living at her parents' house outside of Vienna in the countryside, and they have a duck in their backyard, and we were talking about this lovely duck. She sent me a little video of it, and she said that Emil, the duck, is very happy. They were worried at first because there were four of them. He had three friends. One passed away and two flew away, and then he was by himself. But he's got a little duck pond there, and he stayed, and he's very happy. And she said, she wanted to go out at first, and she was feeding him some breadcrumbs and some lettuce. And then her family said, oh, no, don't feed him the breadcrumbs. We're going to feed him these dried, I think that we decided they were like, what are they called? Dried little worms, maggots or something, whatever. And I said, oh, that's a little odd because a duck by nature wouldn't eat those things because its bill is rounded. So it wouldn't go digging in the dirt for that. I think like in the US, we would put breadcrumbs in a pond and the ducks would take them once they got soft and eat them up. And she said, yeah, I always thought ducks were more vegetarian. And I said, I think so too. But anyway, people get their own ideas about animals need to eat meat. And so we end up feeding things to cats and dogs in many parts of the world where they would never be eating things. So like a lot of dog food in parts of the world is made out of horse meat. And, a dog would never be eating a horse. That's ridiculous. In the nature, they would never be hunting down and killing a horse. Cats would be eating in the US, have a lot of chicken in their meals, and they would never be eating chicken. So human beings have created a lot of ideas and strange ideas that then interrupt and shift and change the way animals then become dependent on meat. Even human beings ourselves, we often eat and are promoted to eat far more meat than we need to. And of course, by doing that, we're engaging in an industry that promotes killing and harming of other beings. And this leads to the Buddha's insight on samsara. So animals who are in the animal realm often don't have a choice often of what they're going to eat. They eat what they're fed. If they're hungry, they're just happy to get food. Whereas human beings can make a choice. We can decide, oh, actually, if I learn about nutrition, I can choose to eat vegetarian or I can choose to eat vegan. We can make our own choices based on what we think is the best diet. If we're concerned about animal welfare and we don't want other creatures to be harmed, then of course choosing a vegetarian or vegan diet makes a lot of sense. But in the end, the Buddha was much more concerned with purifying our states of mind. He wasn't as concerned with our input of dietary needs for our body as he was with our concern of why are we making the choices that we're making. Are the choices we're making in any part of our life, not just our food, are they increasing the three poisons of ignorance, desire, and aversion, hatred, or are they helping us decrease? So of course, when we give up eating meat, we're already becoming kinder because we're not taking another being's body for our sustenance. We're recognizing, okay, hey, I might have liked the taste of those barbecues when I was growing up. I'll use my own example. I grew up in the US. And of course, in the summertime, we had barbecues and we had steaks and we had hot dogs and hamburgers. When you're a child, you have no idea what is a steak and a hot dog and a hamburger because someone's not telling you, oh, hey, we're going to have cow for dinner. Basically that's what a steak and a hamburger is. And they're not saying, oh, we're going to have some ground up kind of a pig's body, which is, I think, what the hot dog mostly was made out of pork. Now they have, chicken hot dogs and things. We're not calling them what they are. We're using these other terms. So as children, we don't really even know what we're having. But, people are having a good time and gathering around a grill. And then you're eating this food and you're starting to become into this culture without questioning it. And of course, you enjoy it because, everyone's having a nice time together. But then when I was about 16 or 17 going into college, one class I had, maybe 18, I guess by that point, one class we had started to talk about, what is the industry of meat? And that was really the first time anyone had brought this concept to my mind, where it was through a class in Latin American studies saying, oh, where does the US get all of its beef for all of its hot dogs and hamburgers and its steaks? Oh, a lot of it was being grown on farmland in South America. A lot of that then distributes people off of their native farming lands because big industry companies buy up all these lands and create this big beef industry. That was the very first time I had even really thought about the fact of hot dogs and hamburgers and McDonald's and steaks being part of this bigger industry. So I don't have any judgment of people. I think a lot of people don't have thoughts about this. And so I'm not here to talk with you about this as a form of judgment, but more as consciousness raising and awareness. I think everyone for himself and herself has to make up their own mind. But what we're doing with our own body, speech, and mind does have consequences. And there are other options that other people don't tell us about that we might not be aware of. So someone has written to me and said, oh, I never even knew that dogs could be vegetarian. Tell me more about that. Well, yes, lentils have lots of protein. Dal has lots of protein. Chapatis fill the belly. The dog is happy to get the chapati and the lentils and protein and sometimes some rice. So there's not a lot of need besides just having the belly full and having enough energy. Many animals, we were laughing, my friend, my sister Sojung and I were laughing that the duck sleeps so much of the day. She said she goes out and says her prayers and her mantras sometimes, and the duck is just coming and sitting down next to her. And by the 45 minutes she's done doing her mantras, the duck is sound asleep. And she said, oh, really, Dasela? That duck sleeps all the time. It sleeps next to me on the grass when I'm doing mantras. It sleeps standing on one foot. It sleeps floating in its little pond. She said most of the day it's been sleeping. And so, this is true of most animals. If you have pets, you notice your cat is sleeping a lot. You notice your dog likes, our dogs and our puppies like to sleep a lot. They're spending a lot of time sleeping. So they're not big animals working the fields like oxen, and pulling a plow, and they're just hanging out. So they don't really need a whole lot of protein for their lives. Which is often what people think, oh, I've got to eat meat because I need the protein to stay active. Well, no, you can get a lot of energy through many kinds of food. So animals are our friends and our companions. They give us a lot of love. They give us a lot of happiness. I mean, even when I just hear the birdies singing here, I feel very peaceful and calm. They're very much happy and singing because if they felt threatened, they wouldn't be making sound. They would be hiding. If they felt there was a predator, they wouldn't be just chirping around, but they're just happy doing their thing. The fish are swimming in the sea. They're very happy, mostly just doing their thing. But there is that other side of, like, the birds are happy because they're getting a lot of food here, and many of them will be eating other life forms like insects, like worms, who are also just trying to enjoy their little insect life. And they're crawling through the earth, and then all of a sudden they come up to the top of the soil, and then a beak grabs their life, and then that worm life is no longer. Similarly, the bird might be distracted, and maybe the cat is hunting the bird. And then all of a sudden the bird is very happy getting the worm. And the next thing the bird knows is its life is going away because the cat's attacked it. And now the cat is taking its life and going to eat it. Now the cat is hunting the bird and doesn't notice that the wild dog is starving and the dog is hunting the cat. And you see what I mean is the cycle can go on and on like this. And it does. That is why the rebirth in the animal realm, according to
Lembra que a pandemia, pois, deves que havia pequeno gato que se não na capa, pois, magari um cara informado que a capa gato.
Someone's coming in over the iPhone. Can we mute that?
Oh.
Okay. I'll step in. Maybe I've picked up someone else's signal. So, the Buddha said, actually, the human rebirth is better because our consciousness is one that can make choices in ways that the animals and the other realms of animal existence cannot. And so the human rebirth is seen as a much more precious, higher rebirth, one where we can really determine the course of our life. That's not left up to chance, that we can also make informed decisions. We can grow, we can explore. We have a reflexive ability to look at how our choices affect other life forms, not only our own life form, but those of others around us. And so the Buddha's quest was to find a way out of suffering. He actually looked at the animals and said, the animals actually do suffer quite a bit. When he was alive here in India 2,600 years ago, he saw the animals being led to slaughter for their bodies for meat. He saw that people took their skins for leather, for clothing. He saw that they had to work and toil in the fields, pulling the plows under the lash. And he said, really, an animal life is very difficult and harsh. And that is not meaning that they're not precious. Every life form that lives has Buddha nature. He saw that they had Buddha nature, but he saw in many and most circumstances for animals, they're not free to be able to have a life of leisure, of peace, of non-harm. And even if they are, let's take, for example, our pets today. I know many of us are cat lovers. And as I mentioned, we have lovely dogs here also at the nunnery. They even can be around beings that are taking care of them and being kind to them, because they have good causes and conditions. They have nice people that somehow they've had the karma to connect with. But if you've ever been to India or any other parts of the world, you know that many animals here do not have those kinds of causes and conditions. Many are on the streets, suffering from starvation, being hunted by other life forms here, and they're not living very easily and kindly. So they're under constant stress. And they don't have the capacity. Like this morning in the temple, the little puppies came in because we were doing our prayers and our pujas, and they could sense intuitively, oh, that's wonderful, I want to go inside. Jetsuma said a few days ago, she was sitting doing her prayer and all of a sudden she felt a little wet tongue on her arm and the puppy was licking her. So of course, animals are intuitive and they know from their own deep sensing that, you know, when there are prayers, when there are healthy vibrations, when there is kindness, they will gravitate to that automatically. The puppies we have here are because local villagers knew if they put these little young puppies over the wall, the nuns would not harm them. We don't really want more dogs here, but we will take care of them. And so people will say, oh, we don't know what to do with these puppies, and they bring them. But, you know, the life of the animal, as kind and sweet as it is, it cannot really study the Dharma. It cannot really understand the teaching of Dharma. It can practice in a sense here, like these dogs have a nice karma because they're not eating meat. They're not having to fight with other dogs for their existence. They're not killing cats to have to survive. And so they do have a kind of precious karma that they have a better chance maybe in their next rebirth to gain a human life. And this is what the Buddha said, is life is changing in and out of appearances all the time. Now we have a wonderful human rebirth. We can practice the Dharma. We can understand the Dharma of suffering. We can understand how suffering arises through impermanence, through ignorance, through selfishness, through hatred. And we can see that there's a way out of suffering that leads to a state in nirvana. And then we can find out how to find that way. We can walk the path, the Noble Eightfold Path, and find ourselves in a much more happy and much more peaceful, much more pleasant place as a human being, sharing Dharma, practicing Dharma, benefiting from Dharma, and then helping other creatures benefit as well. So helping other human beings understand Dharma, how to cultivate right view, that things come in and out of existence, that our actions of our body, speech, and mind definitely affect this way that we experience life, lead into our happiness, lead into our own suffering, lead into our own ignorance, then lead ways out of those. So we need wisdom, compassion, loving kindness, selflessness, that sense of equanimity, that every living thing has Buddha nature, therefore we will not harm anything. We will express our loving kindness, express our happiness, use our speech kindly, gently, maintain noble silence. So when gossiping starts, do you see gossiping? Then we don't need to encourage ourselves to partake in that. We can excuse ourselves and say, nope, I'm going to remain, as Atisha said, remain like a piece of wood. I'm not joining in the gossips. You don't have to say anything. You can just leave the situation and not join with the gossips. We can offer our practice and the merits of our practice as safety for others. So when we decide to maintain noble silence, especially if there's harsh speech, negative speech, aggressive speech, that we don't return that kind of speech. We can absorb and stay in noble silence without that speech harming us. In America, when we were growing up, our parents taught us a little wisdom saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names can never harm me. And yes, names can harm our feelings, but actually if we look for our feelings and we realize, actually, if I'm very brave and I know that my feelings are stronger, my feelings of loving kindness, my feelings of courage, of compassion, of letting go without needing to retaliate, without needing to respond, that those feelings are much stronger than anybody's negative state of mind, anybody else's anger. Of course, we can always move out of any circumstance. I'm not saying stay in a bad moment where someone's being abusive with their voice, with their anger, but you don't have to join them there. Your mind can develop so strongly that your mind is not touched by that anger. You can remain quiet and silent and then just leave the situation. You don't have to respond in kind. We can also use our choice to not listen to media where there's only negativity, only fear-based sounds coming from what people's voices are reporting. Those are just ways that they're seeing the world situation. And unfortunately, a lot of our media these days is very heavily laden with negativity, with fear-based stories. So we can search out humanitarian-based stories. We can search out stories that try to tell balanced positions from both sides. But we should ask ourselves first, how essential is it that we listen to these kinds of stories? Of course, we're part of the world. We need to stay informed. But most of the time, we should pay more attention of the stories that we're telling ourselves. Our stories full of wisdom, full of understanding, full of compassion, full of kindness, full of using our mind, working for the benefit and the happiness of others. If they are, then the stories we hear on the news and the stories we hear around us are not going to scare us. They're not going to make us react. They're going to make us understand, okay, this is samsara. That's what happens when people are living under the power of ignorance, the power of selfishness, the power of hatred and anger. This is what samsara looks like on the physical world, in this realm of materialism, where people start only to think about me and mine, and they start to label and start to separate and make dualistic versions of the world instead of seeing the true unity. Of course, duality is uncomfortable. Of course, duality is painful, because duality is not reflecting the true unity of humanity. Humanity really has a oneness. And I would say even beyond humanity, life has a oneness. As I said, the trees and the green ones give us our breath, give us our air to breathe. Clean water gives us the health of our body. Everything that's living needs breath and water. And so we have much more in common with all of life than what we have in difference. And to fight and divide ourselves on such a fragile and beautiful little planet floating through the space is really a tragedy. We have much more to gain to work in unity with one another, to work in kindness, to work with our sharing our knowledge, sharing our wisdom, sharing our understandings from both the outside of looking at the world through a material lens, as well as looking from the inside through wisdom cultures that have been practicing a lot of inner science, like through Vedanta here in India, which has existed for thousands of years, through Vajrayana Buddhism, which has existed in Tibet for over 1,000 years. We have a lot to learn about inner sciences. So we really could benefit from coming together and a rising of what I call the rising of the West, the wisdom from the West and the East coming together and working as a oneness of humanity, to bring our practice to benefit oneself, to benefit all living creatures, to use our intuitive knowledge. We all know right from wrong, what we don't want. So the golden rule is found throughout the world: do not do to others what you would not want others to do unto you, or do to others what you would want to come back to you. That's the law of karma. So we should be walking our walk and talking our talk, maybe not even too much talking, living more in noble silence, living more in our intuitive knowing of when something is good, follow up with that. When something's not so good, leave it alone. We don't have to argue about things. We don't have to try to force others to see our way. If others are interested, they'll ask. They'll say, hey, I'm wondering, what's your opinion on this? They'll come to you, and then you'll have a good opinion to be able to share, because it will be informed through wisdom, through loving kindness, through compassion, and also through humility. Sometimes we just have to say, geez, I'm just able to listen, but I really don't know. But sometimes just listening is offering quite a lot. So tonight, these were some of the early requests I had before the talk from people to talk more about animals and about intuitive, about using noble silence, and to ask each of us to, really enter our practice through the Eightfold Path. So there's right view, right mindfulness, so making good informed choices. Right view means really trying to see reality in the Buddhist sense is called through emptiness, meaning cause and effect. What we do is creating the reality, and we need to become more aware of that through seeing how we're creating it through our body, speech, and mind. We need to use right speech, right action, right livelihood, and right intentions, right motivations, because what we do have doesn't affect just us, but because of the deep, deep interconnection of this unity with all of life, with the universe, we need to see that we are creating our reality, both in our own choices as well as by those who we're now traveling with on the planet. Right now, there's an awful lot of suffering, but we can do something with that. We can bring our loving kindness, bring our wisdom, bring our selfless compassion to every situation without judgment, without labels, without superiority, without opinions. We can just show up as a force for the good. And I'm sure this planet and any planet in all the universes will never be coming against us if we show up as a force for the good. They might not appreciate it, but eventually they might come to see that there's some wisdom in it. So I'm going to stop now for a few minutes just to see if there are any questions. And if there are, we'll take them. And if not, we'll take another minute or two in our meditation to close and dedicate this lovely 60 minutes of our main moment that we've been able to share together. There, wherever you are in the morning, and here this evening in lovely Mother India. Does anyone have any questions we can listen to, or comments that they'd like to add? So nothing coming up? Okay.
That was a wonderful session, Sitma. It helped a lot to understand some of the basic queries. I just thought that maybe we could have a minute or two from you talking about the current pandemic and with the increasing fear and anxiety, with the second wave. How do we really deal with that in India? Knowing that there's so much of uncertainty. Yeah.
Yep, thank you. Okay, thank you, Pranika. That's good. So not just for India, yes, the second wave in India, but just as a reminder that the whole world was under an incredible pressure for the whole of 2020. And the vaccines got developed very quickly. And so far in the US, almost half the population has received it. And it seems it's been good that the virus is at least leveled and has gone down quite a bit there. In the US, I'm taking as being the most affected still of caseload in the whole world. India is now a close second, but still the US has the highest caseload and the highest by much higher death rate. So what I'd like to say about COVID is that it will be with us for a long time. When I was born, there was no HIV and AIDS, and people don't talk about HIV and AIDS anymore, but it's much more still prevalent in hundreds of millions of cases, but people live with it now. They've found ways to help HIV become not a death sentence as it was in the 80s and the 90s. And COVID will likewise be with humanity now. It will not be eliminated by any means anytime soon. And so it's calling us for greater self-responsibility. Every kind of disease like this, where we can do something basic about it, like with HIV and AIDS at the beginning, no one after the wild romp, especially in the West of the 60s and 70s, where wild sex was all the rage, wanted to use condoms. But then finally people realized they had to wear condoms to prevent catching the HIV. Similarly, at the beginning of this pandemic and even now, no one wants to even wear a mask because they feel their freedom of being able to breathe without a mask on or whatever it is, whether it's uncomfortable or they just feel out of pride that it's going against their own personal freedoms from being able to choose to whether to wear a mask or not. It's a similar mentality of selfishness, of arrogance, of thinking that one's egoic preference is going to be stronger than Mother Nature. And it's just not that way. We're not in control. Mother Nature is a great force, the most powerful force, but she's given us the wisdom to be able to work with her. So in the sense of this pandemic and others that may be coming, wearing a mask is just common sense. Even if you've had the vaccine, you don't know who hasn't had the vaccine. If you're going into really crowded areas like having to travel to work on the subway, even if you've had both shots of the vaccine, for myself, I'm still going to wear the mask. I'm going to do everything I can to take care of myself and those around me that make medical common sense. I've been the voice here at the nunnery for much more stringent precautions of wanting to be sure that people coming in and out are keeping distance, are wearing masks, that the nuns who have to meet people bringing our food in are also wearing masks, are wearing gloves, that we're being very, very cautious as much as possible. And so the word of the day is smiling through your eyes. You can still show your smile. The biggest loss to me of the mask is that we can't see people's beautiful smiles. You know, if you're masked up, you have to smile with your eyes. When we smile, we feel much more at ease. We feel much more comfortable. That sense of fear and panic and anxiety is dispelled. I mean, just smile right now. Just look at someone in your room that you love, or at your animal that you love, or think of some teacher or being that you love. Think of your mother. You know, think of your mother and smile, even if your mother's passed away. Think if you could see her coming through the door right now. Oh, it'd be so great to see my mother. She's been passed away for a long time. That will make you smile. If you need a reason to smile, you need to do smile meditation. That just by smiling sends a signal to our whole being that we're safe, that we're okay, that things are all right. And so with the pandemic, we have to be reasonable. We have to use science. We have to say, yes, that science does have some lessons for us to know. Even if we have the word of the Buddha saying, I'll protect you from pandemics and floods and poisonous animals, I believe that the Buddha will protect me from those things. But still, we have to be practical. We have to be realistic. So then once we take those precautions, we know that we can just do what we can for ourselves, but that's the only person we can change is ourselves. So we wear a mask, we feel confident that we're doing what we can, that we're safe, and then we move out and do the best we can in the world without judging those who are not at that place, those who refuse to wear the mask. We don't get angry at them. Those who refuse to get the vaccine, we don't judge them and say, what idiots, how stupid, how could they do that? How could they be so selfish? Don't let your mind go there. You have to accept everyone on their evolutionary journey everywhere in the universe is just where they're at. We cannot change others, and certainly they're not going to be helped by our judgment of them. So please try to drop the judgment. If we drop the judgment, we'll drop fear. We'll drop our own righteousness. That's the problem, is the ignorance and the ego born from righteousness and selfishness. So let's not have that. Let's just keep our eyes on our own commitment, our own bodhisattva ideals. May we be free from suffering. May we have happiness in its causes. May we have joy and no sorrow. May we live in equanimity, wishing these same things for all that lives. Staying protected. Refuge means that we have protection. So those of us in the pandemic that have refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, that's our protection. We take that mindset with us wherever we go. We don't have to worry about a thing. We'll be taken care of. And we believe that from our heart of hearts, not through blind face. Blind face is our masked face. Through blind faith, but by knowing, look at your practice already, how much it's supported you, and continue to go with it. We have to trust in something. We can trust in our own experience. We can have confidence that we have great traveling companions on the path. We have a practice. One day we know our life will be changing from this physical form into something else. But if our mind is very well trained, very nice and calm, very full of loving kindness, compassion for ourselves and for all others, we'll feel very solid in our practice. That's the meaning of refuge. We'll have the safety. We can go anywhere we want with that.
Thank you so much.
Just don't pay too much attention to that one, Prenika, of just this COVID, because always cancers will be there. HIV you're born into the world with HIV. See, when I was born, there wasn't even the HIV. Now you were born into a world without COVID. Now COVID is there. The next generation, this is the nature of samsara. On the physical level, this is the nature of suffering that comes through ignorance, attachment, and aversion. The other thing I would say is use this example to really make your renunciation pure. Renunciation means, like the lotus that starts off in the mud and muck, that mud and muck is samsara, but the lotus grows up through the water, above and rises out of it. It still is connected to the mud and muck of samsara, but the lotus flower is not stained by it. The lotus flower is the metaphor for the enlightened mind. When the mind is completely purified, there's nothing that can happen in the realm of samsara that it all will touch and stain the mind. Now, some lotus flowers reach as far as somehow just on the surface, and they're still a little bit affected by the samsara because the flowers touching the surface of the water. Some come up above the surface, and then the water can churn and everything can happen, and the mind is completely pacified. Someone like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, for example. So we just keep growing, and we want our lotus flower to be pure, clean, steady, and renouncing the samsara, not afraid of it. We know about it, we've come from there, but we're no longer part of it. That's what our practice is for. Great question. Thank you for that, Prenika. Oh,
Thank
there's
you,
one
Sidma.
puppy making the rounds. Any other questions before we do our dedication or comments? I mean, the other practice we can do for COVID is think of all of those who are suffering to breathe. And when we do our meditation, when we do our breath practice, throughout the day, come back to awareness of breathing in and breathing out as much as possible, and send the wish, may all be free, may all be able to breathe, and may all life be sustained. You can give that genuine, definite wish out and really visualize and send that out to all those who are struggling. May those who need oxygen quickly find the oxygen. You can really dedicate your practice that way. Here in India, in the US, all around the world. That would be another way to use the circumstances of COVID with your practice and give out that genuine wish. May all just have the simple capacity to be able to breathe and stay alive.
Thank you
That's
so
a great
much.
recommendation.
Yeah. So that's something we can do throughout the whole day, as often as we can bring our attention back to that breath that we have, that we're not taking it for granted, and that we're sending out that kind of pure intention, those pure merits for all to be able to have that the same way. That would be wonderful. Okay, my dears, well, thank you for hanging in. We've gone a few minutes over, so I'm just going to say the dedication prayer now, unless there's another comment or question. There's something in the chat. Did someone say? Okay, someone had to sign off. Okay. So I'm going to just dedicate our time together. So we'll dedicate, as we just did, may all beings struggling with COVID quickly and swiftly find all of the support that they need, the physical, through the oxygen, the medicines, the place, kindness of the care for all those who are on the front lines, of the doctors and nurses, the ambulance drivers, the crematorium workers. May they have the love and support. May they physically and emotionally feel the gratitude from all the beings here in India for everything they're going through. May all the health workers everywhere feel deep gratitude and get the love and support they need in this horrific epidemic that has challenged humanity in ways that has not been seen at all by any of these generations who are alive now. May we all be part of the solution. by being oneness of humanity, living without fear, with total courage of our convictions, to give loving kindness, to give compassion, to give non-judgment in equanimity for all that lives, to be a refuge for those without a refuge. Through this virtue, may we swiftly, having gained Guru Buddha state, place each and every sentient being without exception in that state. Precious supreme Bodhi mind, may it where born arise, and where born never decline, but increase forevermore. Avalokiteshvara, great treasure of unconceiving compassion, Manjushri, lord of stainless knowledge, Tsongkhapa, crown jewel of the land of the snow sages, Losang Drakpa, I make requests at your lotus feet. And may we all attain Buddhahood for the benefit of every sentient being. Thank you, everybody, for joining in this Maine moment. And if you're not here this evening and you find us somehow on a recording, thank you, and may it benefit your practice and lead to your highest happiness and greatest good. And have definite confidence in goodness and loving kindness, compassion and equanimity. They're there for you always. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Buddhist or not. Your true nature is Buddha nature or awakened nature, and is one of goodness. So believe in that, trust in that. So we'll be thinking of you all for the next 2 months. We're in deep retreat. Please do come in to Kashi Gets Doing and our Facebook page with some pre-recorded videos that people will be helping and sharing while I'm in retreat. So there will be some little messages coming that take good care. Nice to see you today. Nice to meet you in Brunswick. And Doreen, and thank you to Janet for hosting. And nice that David Otto tuned in as well. So, and Beatrice on the iPhone. So Prenika here in India. Thank you very much, everybody. We're kind of spanning between India and the US, and I don't know where Beatrice is from, but glad that you could join us. And another practice I'd encourage you is really to give your smile away. Just give a genuine smile. Just see who's around you and give them that little smile that just shows, you know, I see you. You don't even have to say hello to anybody. Just give a little smile. Okay, everybody, be well. Take good care.
Thank you so much. Thank you.